Okay, wonderful. So, welcome everybody, and thanks for coming this week. Today, I it took a little bit before I recorded. I know there was a little bit of a gap, just the way my flying was. I was quite busy when I was in Japan. I was supposed to have a trip to Hong Kong, and there was a flight canceled, all these problems. So that's when I was planning on doing some recording, and had to do it when I got home. So I know there was a little bit of a gap. And sometimes in a course, if you leave a gap like that, it's just sort of, yeah, just energetically, it starts to dampen things down a little bit. So anyway, apologize for that. But today I'd just like to make this Q&A, and really this, at least as far as it goes for me, is kind of going to be the last class of this book before we move into the next book. So the next book we'll be moving into will be Rob Priest's book, which used to be called The Alchemical Buddha, which I actually like as a title, but now, of course, they have it to more fitting title in some ways, which is the Psychology of Buddhist Tantra by Rob Priest. This is the copy that I have. So this is the next book we're going to do on Tantra before we actually go into the traditional material of Naram Chenmo, and we'll start that soon after just the retreat. I'm doing a retreat for a couple weeks, and on the other side of that, we can start with Rob Priest's book. So I just let's just take a moment to I'll just read the Heart Sutra to get started. I always start with the Heart Sutra as a blessing to always remind us that first and foremost is our practice of emptiness and our views emptiness. Homage to Professional Wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I've heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir and mass vultures mountain together, great assembly of monks and nuns and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, was looking perfectly at the prize of profound perfection of wisdom, looking perfectly also at the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then the Apara Buddha, Venerable Shariputra, said to Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to gauge the prize of profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to gauge the price of profound perfection, wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly also at the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is none other than form, form is none other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Should I put you like this? All phenomena are emptiness having no characteristics. They're not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement. They have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, should I put you in emptiness? There's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. There's no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element and so forth, and up to no mental element, and also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth, up to no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there's no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing utterly beyond perversity, they attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly in the three times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest, complete Buddhism, state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal to the unequaled mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as truth. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayatam Gata Gata Paragata Parasamgati Bodhisoha. Shariputra Bodhisattva, great beings should train the profound perfection of wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose in that concentration and said to Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, that he'd spoken well. Good Sunderland, just like that. Since it's like that, just as you have revealed in that way, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, and the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Okay, so let's just take a moment also to just take refuge in our hearts here. We just say, I and all sentient beings into achieve enlightenment. Go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Taking refuge to the Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, and Sangha jewel. And setting our intention today for bodhicitta, whatever we do, may it be for the awakening of all sentient beings. May we become Buddha, that we lead all sentient beings to Buddhahood as well, without exception. Okay, so if this is sort of a class that we're going to have this sort of a question and answer. Hang on, a little too much sun coming in here. There we go. Question and answer, and a bit of a discussion sort of for a sum up of the book. Um, I'll just open up the floor here if anyone has any questions or in particular, hang on, it's got weird angles of lighting coming in the morning here. Just any thoughts on the book? I love this book very, very much, as I've said, and I know it's an old book, and there's been so many other books that have been written since then, but sometimes the classics are the best. And I just think as an overall overview to Tantra, in particular, getting just the idea, sort of the main intention on why you're doing Tantra. It's very, 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 very good book. So any comments or questions or just reflections on what you read? Mhm. Yes, Christine, you've always got great, great quotes and questions and everything. So
Well, I try not to disappoint. The I think that this book has done two really interesting things for me. It has sort of given me an understanding of how I have and have the intention to have tantra in my daily life. But it also has, I mean, as part of how I live my daily life, and not just um, sort of an adjunct to it, but integrated into how I live my daily life, and also how that sort of vulnerable spot of using tantra to using tantra in my daily life to solve my personal problem that might be occurring right this minute. So it reminds me of a story that I heard Rinpoche tell a while ago, and that was that he and his mom, his grandmother were out walking, and a bear came by and scared them both, and she went uh, clamoring away from where they were, saying "Om Tari Tutari Turiso, Om Tari Tutari Turiso, Om Tari Tutari," hoping that she and her grandson would be protected from that bear. And I do that so much. I find myself in a situation that is adverse in one way or another, and I grab at the first mantra that is
Mhm.
resting at the top of my head and hope that it can drag me through without me, you know, embarrassing myself or making somebody else mad or something like that. And and so it sort of put those two parts of tantra that exist in my life in perspective and together as ongoing meaningful tools,
Mhm.
helpful tools, important tools.
Excellent. And they're tools of happiness, tools of joy, right? So when you think about that, anytime you're running into difficulty, your reaction that you're getting, Christine, is actually to express positivity, right? Happiness, goodness, compassion, like as a toolbox. And that's wonderful. Like, what kind of karma you're projecting out? And it's using these tantric tools to transform and do positive things. That's amazing. Really, really good.
Yeah, yeah.
Really
You
good.
know, when I first became acquainted with Rinpoche, 23 or 4 years ago, whenever it was, the the he was supporting a series of classes, I think, worldwide on Buddha Dharma, and he had I think, 2 or 3 classes left. And I said to him, "May I go to those classes?" And he said, "Oh no, you wait and they'll come back around. Don't worry, they'll come back around." Well, 25 years later, I was still waiting. And then you popped up with this class. And so you gave me an opportunity to reflect back on
Mhm.
what I was able to learn from Rinpoche's students and from his ongoing teachings, um, that with without that kind of preliminary introduction. And so I know in a way this particular class has been reassuring to me that, oh my gosh, I get it, I did get it, and so this class has been very important to me in that way.
Good. I'm very, very happy. Excellent. Because sometimes when I pick this stuff, I don't know how it's going to land or whether people like it or appreciate it. You don't know always. So, and things change. Karma's always changing, and things, there's always a history to everything, right? Just to your own life, all the situations you find yourself in, and you reacting to these karmic situations, you end up creating a whole narrative of the life that you've lived, right, with other people historically, which is the old adage Napoleon always said, show me what was going on in the world when a man was 20 years old, and I'll tell you the rest of his life. Like
Uh,
things, and there's some truth to that, as we know, right? But if you look the way, a bunch of us been practicing a long time, uh, how Tibetan Buddhism was being presented culturally or historically when we started compared to now, and things have changed quite a bit as
oh
you
my
go
gosh.
years. I mean, but for me, over 30 years now, the world's changed so. I mean, it's unrecognizable even since COVID over the last 5 years, let alone 30 years ago. But Tibetan Buddhism's changed um, it's so accessible, everything, but at the same time, a lot of the stuff's very superficial. It's not contextualized properly. People don't know what to do. All the information's there, but they don't know how to put it together. So it's kind of interesting. Whereas, let's say when we started, you just couldn't get any information. It's the complete opposite. Also, sometimes being from a more Western point of view, we might like how I was taught, and I was in grad school at the time, as I wanted to be taught all this stuff like it was a university course, for instance. That's a lot of sort of more Western North American students. Our education system has a big deal, a big influence in how we think we should be taught Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism. Whereas if you look at it, oftentimes in Tibetan community, it's more spontaneous, almost more shamanic, more cultural. So there's all sorts of differences this way. So I've always felt it's nice to give people something like, if you read Lama Yeshe's book, you get a little bit, you need these kinds of introductions for Tantra. So it's properly, again, contextualized, or you know how to use it. Or a big thing is what I've tried to do also, just all these courses, is just really do the thing in the Gelugpa tradition is supposed to do, which is to unify Sutra and Tantra, like to understand how they fit together so they're not separated. So you're not got all this sort of open philosophical self-help teachings of Sutra, and then you get all this weird magical, you know, mystical stuff on the other side, and you don't know how they work together. But you see, once we do the studies that we do, that not only are they supposed to work together, but we see the logic of how they do. And again, Lama Yeshe's book's really, really good for that, I think. And it's not just his book, as you know, there's a lot of good books now on Tantra and stuff. But I like it very, very much. So thanks for sharing. That's amazing. Anybody else here? I'm gonna call out Rob. What do you think, Rob? We've always had such good conversation. Anything? I know you've liked this book, but anything to add or?
Uh, I'm not sure if there's anything to add, but
Mhm.
I do want to say that yeah, I do really like that book very much. I read it years ago, maybe over 10 years ago, when I didn't really have much of a clue about Tantra at the time. But it was still a great read. Like it was very powerful. And then over that time, more than 10 years, and so I reread it recently, and it's like reading it for the first time. Um, it's yeah, so precious and powerful, and like you said, it's really accessible, right? It's kind of like easy reading, really. Like if that's the thing you're into, it's easy reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also to integrate, it helps me, like Christina was saying, it helped me along with other books and teachings, but that book was has been pretty important to help me have a better grasp of Tantra, and like you mentioned, combining or unifying Sutra and Tantra,
Mhm.
or the conventional and the ultimate,
Mhm.
and the mystical and the mundane, and trying to live that way every day.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been wonderful. Because it's so easy to get caught up because of our conditioning and our habits, right? Is
Mhm.
whether it's like, oh, poor me, or life is hard. And then when you reflect on the teachings, the tantric teachings, again in that book that Lama Yeshe provides, like Christina mentioned, as a toolbox, is very helpful to use those teachings and uh, not be caught up in not to take our suffering so seriously, because it's all empty. It
Yeah.
counts. So on a conventional reality, it's important. It's real. If you step in front of a bus, you're going to get killed, right?
True.
It's a real thing.
Mhm.
Or like the bear that was in my yard, right? I can't just walk over and pat him. He's
Mhm.
dangerous. But then
Mhm.
at the same time, looking at things from a view of emptiness, um, it helps you sort of see through them, not take it so seriously, not be so, attached or overwhelmed by it. And then you see how everything is perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, that's the true nature of reality, right? Is everything is empty and everything is pure. You know,
Mhm.
helps you work towards pure view, which
Mhm.
is the goal. And right.
Mhm. Yeah. Very good. Thank you. So you see, this is what's interesting with Tantra is it because we're bringing the final result into the path and making it sort of our, it's kind of like the process is the product. Where, by what we do, we're bringing that final result about, but also we're living as if it's already happened right now. And so that's what's interesting is that it's a tool to bring about our enlightenment, but we're living our enlightenment now. That's what's very, very special about Tantra. And that's why they oftentimes, I know in the Nyingma tradition, they call it path of transformation, right? We'll say that that's, Sutra is more the path of renunciation, Tantra's path of, um, transformation and higher teachings on Dzogchen or whatever is passive, sort of primordial purity or, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's sometimes we forget just how radical this is because I think our culture has changed so much. I think in a good way that there's sort of a base level, some ways of a little bit of a new age hippie spirituality that everybody has right now. Everybody's spiritual, whatever that means. And so a lot of these teachings aren't foreign to us. If anything, they're just sort of in our day-to-day life. Whether it's on podcasts or on, movies or cultural stuff, even in politics, we're exposed to all this stuff now. Whereas I think probably we forget just how radical this was, even when we first approached it years ago. In Western culture, you might have had sort of a general kind of new age theosophical background, which might have been a little bit too mystical and not tied to the ground. And then you have, uh, our traditional Western religions of Judaism and Christianity, which didn't really weren't teaching much of a mystical component to it. And so when people first came across the stuff of Tibetan Buddhism and Tantra, where it's both mystical and grounded in everyday tools and techniques, that's really, really unique and special. I think that's when I first came into that, I was just absolutely shocked. And another thing that I found shocking about it, when I started studying in NKT back in 1995, is that they gave an instruction manual. So it wasn't just mystical teachings that, oh, well, this is cool, it's a cool way to believe, but there wasn't an actual how to program in all these sort of more Western things. Like you might read all these Christian mystics or theosophical stuff or whatever, hermetical traditions, but no one's actually telling you how to do it. But when you study Tantra, it's just like, like a whole, like I say in IKEA, you get the instructions for the IKEA cabinet, how to make it, or get a whole course on how to learn how to golf or something like that. So that's very, very unique and very, very special that way. So thank you, Rob. That's great. So I just wanted to maybe we can even talk about this just to finish. We don't have to so go on and on if people don't have questions, but I just wanted to just give some final remarks here, and then if people want to, give their own take on it, that's great. One of the last chapters or sort of sections in Lama Yeshe's book is called The Tantric Personality, What is it to have a tantric personality? It sounds almost like, maybe some kind of dysfunction or something, but no, to have a tantric personality, he says it. It's really a few notes here. He was saying, we were always saying that the mind is most important, particularly in Buddhism, and not the body. But Tantra is what says that both are of equal importance. And that's what I found right away when I started studying Tantra, is the emphasis on the body, which from a Judeo-Christian point of view, the body is something like an evil container. At best, you get rid of it, and at worst, it's a source of sin and evil and delusion and everything else. And sometimes you get a similar view in some sort of sutric forms of Buddhism, of course, how the body, of course, is the sort of site, your organic body of true sufferings and also delusions and drives and desires and obsessions and so forth. So we have to let go of this. But Tantra says that they're both of equal importance here. He says it's like a land containing precious metals. So our body contains the most precious resource, in particular, looking at higher tantra, Kundalini energy, and our yin and yang energies, or white and red drops, that we use this energy to bring about higher Buddhist realizations. So we often feel bliss in our lives. Tantra is all the meditations and exercises to arouse, control, and utilize this blissful energy as a resource for the attainment of complete fulfillment. As long as you have mindful awareness, you can have pleasure. Whether you call pleasure samsaric or worldly or not, pleasure itself can lead to liberation. So it's a choice of whether our pleasures are normally worldly pleasure and our attitudes that lead us to more samsara, or through a tantric point of view, using our pleasure to realize enlightenment here. So the essence of Tantra says is to deal skillfully with pleasure. So a person who qualifies for Tantra is one who can cope with pleasure, where pleasure is conducive to liberation. This is the Tantric personality. So when talking about what's a Tantric personality, someone who knows how to use bliss, someone who knows how to use pleasure for higher spiritual attainments, right? Someone who can embody that, someone who can live with that, someone who can cope with that, so to speak. That's a true Tantric person. But I like what he said here. So someone who only knows how to be miserable can't do Tantra, right? So the resource of pleasure is always in this body of ours. This is why the human life is considered so precious. We just need a skillful method like Tantra to awaken and use this resource to bring perfect pleasure and happiness to ourselves and others, and ultimately the happiness of true enlightenment. But to do this, we have to break our habit of being miserable. We have to see all problems as everything else coming from our own mind. So there's nothing to blame but ourselves on one level, but we are also have this sort of ability in our body to be to use this energy, blissful energy in our body, our organic body, our subtle energies to realize true enlightenment, right? So this is, if we are from a tantric point of view, creators creating our reality. We know that even through studying karma and emptiness, that we're always creating reality. It's sort of using our happiness and bliss and subtle energies in our body is the rocket fuel for sort of even more powerful creation, right? Sort of harnessing all this energy to bring about this creation sort of at each moment in our lives in sort of a real, direct, and intense way, living intensely, you could say, as Joe DeLis would say. But I like what he says here, and this is what I wanted to end on, because this I'm always sort of looking for more of the Nietzschean angle and stuff. But he said, I think it's great. You can't do Tantra if you're a miserable person or an unhappy person. I think that that's absolutely amazing. So as Nietzsche would say, like, are you an affirmative, joyful person, or are you a reactive, unhappy person, right? So Tantra is all about affirmation. It's all about joy. And that's how I've always seen, which is I've always titled any courses that I've done, sort of like Path to Joy, Path to Bliss, oh joy, oh bliss, right? And showing what those are. But I really feel that that's the most important thing about Tantra is, we're always talking about tantric magic and deities and meditations and stuff, but most of all, what it's about, it's about joy. Like we can talk about bliss. Like I say, those two things are a little bit different. When we talk about bliss of happiness, again, it's that feeling of deep, deep satisfaction, sort of completion, totality, rest, ultimate satisfaction, which is what we all want. Anytime, even from an addictive standpoint, you're trying to be happy, you're wanting to have sex, You're wanting to eat that chocolate cake. You're wanting to have a coffee in the morning at sunset. You want to lie on the beach in Cancun getting a suntan. You want to go to that nice French restaurant down the street. You want to go golfing on a nice spring day. Anytime you're doing anything to be happy, because on the basis we're always unhappy in samsara, we're always dissatisfied, uncomfortable. We're always in that state what we call dukkha, right? Dukkha being the axle of your chariot that's off, the alignment's off. You're always off. You're always feeling off, right? So even I always like when I go to the hot springs here and I'm lying this beautiful sunny day in the hot springs in Ainsworth, and yet you still feel shitty, right? Like you're just like, what what's missing here? I've got the day off. I'm in a beautiful sunny day. I've got bald eagles flying. I see the lake and I'm in the hot spring, and yet something doesn't feel right. I feel like something's missing, right? This is the classic feeling of what Hegel and Freud call desire as negativity, in the sense that there's a lack, right? So anytime we want pleasure, we want that feeling of totality, and that's what bliss is. But I always add joy in the sense of affirmation or creativity or power, the more Nietzschean element. In other words, to be able to say yes, not no, right? So at the end of Joyce's Ulysses, right? Yes, 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 the three yeses, to always be able to say yes. So that's what I always add for joy, is oftentimes when we look at happiness or pleasure, it's temporary, right? That's a great cup of coffee. That's a great sexual experience. That's a great swim in the lake at 5 in the morning on a summer day. Wow, that's a great hamburger. I went to the hamburger festival. That's an amazing hamburger. But it doesn't last. Whereas what joy is usually seen as, and I sort of often uh, look to people like one of my favorite philosophers, Clément Rosset. He's dead now. He looked like Santa Claus, old French Nietzschean, and he wrote all these probably 100 little books, are all about 50 to 100 pages long, most of them just on joy and happiness. And what he meant by that is being happy no matter what, like having that joyous attitude that no matter what's coming at you, whether it's a good day or a bad day, you're at peace with it. And he always said that a lot of Nietzsche's philosophy points to the more Greek Stoic ideal of affirmation, which is if you're seeing everything happen to you as some form of necessity, almost karmically, you don't have a choice. You're finding yourself in situations, things are happening to you. You're so happy you accept them the way they are. And that's what transforms them, right? That's the sort of stoic, what they call being worthy of the event, is that whatever happens to me, I'm so happy, I don't care, right? And that's what they say to be a real stoic. Being a stoic isn't the Christian um, criticism of Stoicism. The first part of the Roman Empire, where they're making fun of Stoics, they want to replace Stoicism, which was the main state religion, with Christianity. So they said Stoics are indifferent. Unlike us Jesus people, where we love everything, Stoics don't give a shit about anything. They're totally checked out, right? That's not what Stoicism is at all. Stoicism is being so affirmative that you accept everything with an open heart, where it's like, may it be thus, may it not be different. I got cancer, bring it on. I'm having a great hamburger, bring it on. Sunny day, cloudy day, rainy. Oh, I just got fired from work, bring it on. Like I'm so happy. I just surf through everything in a positive way. And that happiness gets expressed and shared to everyone around me, right? So I'm willing it as thus. I'm willing this happiness as thus. So that's what I feel joy is on a real deep level, is it's not just the pleasure of having temporary pleasures that always go. Sometimes they come, sometimes they go, like you can't get them or they never really last. It's that being happy no matter what. And Clément Rosset said the secret of joy, it's really beautiful. He said, is hidden right on the tip of your nose where you don't notice. Like I've got this huge nose of mine that's famous in our family. We all have it. It's a recessive gene from my grandfather. But anyway, look at your nose. Like when you look at it there, it's like, wow, it's always here, but I never notice it, right? Like a lot of things. What was it? A one philosophy podcast I was listening to, they were showing it was something Jack Derrida wrote, which is really interesting. Sorry, I'm just letting Josh in here. Welcome, Josh. Hi. you never notice your hands. So what he was saying is, we do everything with our hands. Our whole way of coping with the world, or basically seeing everything as handy in the world that we're doing our self projects with, for the most part, we're doing it with our hands. And yet, do we ever even notice them, our hands? Like my hands are all old now, but it's just like it's amazing that they're just a part of your body, but they're just the way the world comes to you and how you affect the world in and through your hands. So what I'm saying is that so Clement Rosetta, taking it back to joy, he said, "What's the secret of joy that's hidden in plain sight? It's that you're alive. You're alive, and isn't that amazing? It's like you have a mind, you're in a life, you're living it." And that's always such a special thing. It's something you take for granted. So there's a great Krzysztof Kieślowski was a great Polish film director that was very popular in the 1990s. I never saw it, I'll be honest with you. And it's a big hole in my movie or sort of art cinema background. But you could probably get, in fact, I should probably watch that. They're probably free online. But he did a series of movies called Decalogue, which they were made for Polish TV when it was still Soviet Poland in the late 1980s. And each movie, it's 10 movies, one for each of the 10 commandments. And it's all takes place in this apartment block in Warsaw. So it's how do each of these people in 10 separate stories break one of the 10 commandments? So it's really interesting, right? So he's a really, really spiritual guy, but you might remember for old people like us, he did three movies based on the three colors of the French flag, right? First one's blue, second one's white, third one's red for liberty, equality, and well, the fraternity or solidarity, human solidarity. And the last one, red, is the penultimate one that sums up the other two movies. Absolutely fantastic. But where I'm going with is there's an amazing scene in the White movie on equality. It takes place of this Polish businessman who's kind of down and out in Paris, ends up moving back to Poland, I believe. And he has this one friend that's helping him, and he's a bit of a shifty guy, but whatever, the hero. But his friend says, I know you never have any money, but if you ever need money, I know someone who will pay you to kill them. Like if it's a paid job to assassinate this guy and you'll get a lot of money for it. So if that ever comes up, and he says, well, what are you talking about? It's a standing offer. Whenever you want to do this, I can arrange it and you'll get all this money. You just have to kill this guy. So in the movie, blah, 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 nothing's working out and he needs more money. And so he goes to his friend and he says, uh, I need that money. And he's like, do you want to kill this guy? I'm going to kill this guy. I've never killed anybody, but I need this money. I'm desperate. I'm going to do it. And he says, is the offer still standing? He says, absolutely. Offer is still standing. And he's like, well, what do I have to do? And it's like, go to this subway station at the end of the line, whatever, after work, walk down to the track level, and a guy's going to be there. He'll give you a gun, kill him, and then on in his purse in his jacket is the money. Okay, da, 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 da. So you can imagine what's happening. I'm sure you're putting it all together right now. He walks down there, and who is it? It's his friend through the whole movie. And he's like, oh my God, like Matthew. And he's like, yep, it's me. And he's like, I've got whatever, like $50,000 or something. Uh, have the gun. No, okay, no. So you have to bring the gun. So that's the important thing. So the hero, brings the gun. So the guy has something. He didn't. The gun wasn't on the guy wants to be killed. So this is an important thing. So he says, "Are you ready?" Yes. Okay, I'm going to kill you right now. You ready? One, two, three. So the hero takes out the gun, sticks it, and then pulls the trigger. And there's big bam, and the guy falls over and he catches him. And then he says, there's two bullets in this gun. The first one I just shot you with is a blank. The second one's real. Do you want me to pull the trigger? And his friend says, no, the deal's off. So that's an important, I've never forgotten that scene. As you can see, 30 years on, I've remembered that with my autistic brain. But if we were in a similar situation, unless we're dying of cancer or something really awful, most of us would probably say that. Most of us would probably do that. We take our life, our mind, our world for granted, totally for granted. So as long as we have life, as long as we're awake in our lives, we have that capacity to have joy in our life. And the joy, sometimes on a very subtle level, again, is just accepting being alive and seeing how wonderful it is. And that basis is almost like a tantric kernel for transformation based on that deep, 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 very subtle affirmation. Do you see what I'm getting at? And so I feel that that's what, when he says to do Tantra, you can't be a miserable person. There has to be that fundamental affirmation there, I think, of loving life or loving yourself on a very subtle level, accepting that and then building up from there. And Tantra will amplify that and really, really become a force of affirmation in a more deeper way. So I just wanted to say that just to sort of finish off that book on the little section here on tantric personality. Does anyone want to add to that, or is what do you think?
Matthew,
Mhm.
I you always answer questions I'm going to ask before I ever ask them. And
Yeah, you say that. That's very sweet. Thank you.
that kind of just happened. What I was going to ask you is we are, some of us are going to be able to do this Haruka
Mhm.
retreat right away.
Yeah.
And I was wondering about the best way or the most effective way to apply all this amazing information and understanding through all these teachings to this particular this retreat, this whole thing, which is it's just going to open wide everything that we've been learning, I suspect.
Mhm.
And I think you kind of answered that, just talking about the attitude you bring to it. And I'd never really focused on it that way so much. So thank you for that. And that's kind of a gift that I can take with me now into this. I have no hesitation. I didn't really before, but I really don't have a hesitation now. And I feel full of what I need to be for that. So thank
Wonderful.
you.
Well, thank you, and I'll be doing that with you. So we'll be doing that together. It'll be a wonderful retreat. And again, it's about yeah, there's so much there. And again, let's see what Rinpoche says. I mean, these things are bottomless in some ways, but ultimately with tantras, we say it's about pure conception and pure appearance, right? In other words, we're changing our conceptions and having sort of an idea that, okay, well, we're changing ourselves in our world rather than being a regular self. We're going to see ourselves as being a pure being of light and goodness in a pure world. And then the point is that over time, that will change the appearances and it will start to look that way. So it really is just the idea of holding or embodying that energy and then living it. Like, and that's why tying it to sort of a joyous, blissful, and affirmative way of doing it. It's just like, what does it mean to live bliss, live happiness, live light, literally? Like, that's sort of who Haruka or any of these, Buddhas are, right? I mean, there's so many Buddhas and they're all the same that way. They're light beings. Like, I love it in Japanese tantric Buddhism, they call it Nyorai or light being, right? That's what we're going to be. So just think of that, being the light. What does it mean to be the light, to live the light for everyone around you? So Christine, you had your hand up there. So
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll be in the retreat with you guys as well. But I think I keep coming back to one sort of dilemma that I have, and looking back at the growth and sort of thriving of Buddhism over the millennium, you so very often see it existing in community, what it's monasteries or whatever. And we in this day and age, and certainly in the West, have practices that are more independently fostered. We do a great deal of work on our own. We take advantage of classes like this and the occasional teaching, but very often I think people find themselves doing this work on their own, and so that for me challenges how we integrate Tantra into our daily lives and to our what we hope will be our looking forward, and how we interpret what has gone on in the past, and so that difficulty of recognizing joy and bliss and using it in the rest of the world, and there's not other people out there doing that. You kind of on your own with that, and to me that is a challenge, and it's I'm having a hard time finding my way in the world that I live with, in the world that I live in, and still finding a good place of expression or way of expression in that community from my tantric
That's a
point of
hard
view.
one. There's different ways to answer that, Christine. Like, no matter what, this work has to be done by yourself, right? Like, all your own work of individuation, spiritual transformation, no one can do it for you. You have to do it yourself. I mean, no matter what. I think with Tantra, once you want to go deeper with it, you have to do it yourself anyway. Like I always say, you can just keep it at a superficial level where you just do pujas with people once a week or once a month or once a year, or you do like when I'm in Asia at different temples, people just go for New Year's and light some incense and go like this and okay, I'm done, right? I mean, not to criticize, that's great. People do what they can or what they want to do. But if you want to get sort of higher tantric realizations, you have to do a lot of retreat, a lot of work. And that's something you have to do yourself. So that's why they say on a deeper level, the Sangha jewel, who you're taking refuge in, isn't just the Sangha of the wider community, like the Buddhist community in general, or your temple in general. You're taking refuge with what they call Arya Sangha. In other words, people in the community or in the past or in the lineage that have realizations, particularly emptiness. Like psychically, you're hooking up with them, you know? Like almost on an astral level, you're saying all my forefathers and foremothers, all the people in the past, and even now that are doing this somewhere in the world, psychically, we're a community and we're supporting each other. Like all the contemplatives, even in other traditions, we're doing this very deep, subtle work together, right? So you are alone, but you're alone anyway, right? No matter what, you're alone. Uh, in the wider part of this huge process of alchemical process of you getting enlightened, you're alone. You're walking this path. That's what we always say. Right? Like it was one of my old literature teachers said that our lives are like parallel lines, right? Like it just depends how close you can resonate with people, but you're all separate. Everyone reaches enlightenment separately. You're not, it's important to see that. So there is a loneliness in this. And of course, the more you do Tantra and go deeper, you're becoming a completely different form of life. So you don't fit in with quote unquote normal people, with civilians, so to speak. So how do you relate to normal people? You always think of that. It's very, very hard to. But that's why you relate on a bodhicitta level, where it's just being kind and loving and compassionate. Like Rinpoche told me, because how do you relate to people? And he said, hey, wherever you are, you can always talk to people about two things: traveling and food. He gave me that advice in the world. You always say, hey, have you been here? Where and then, hey, where's a good restaurant? It's kind of like Anthony Bourdain, like you can always connect with people on a food level. And I always thought like very basic human solidarity and interaction, which is a good way of doing it, right? So one guy is it's one podcast I listen to. He does a lot of stuff on magic. He's pretty cool. He said, be like Gandalf was with the hobbits, right? If you look at Lord of the Rings, Gandalf knows the whole deal. He's working at the super high level, but then he has these very, very simple little country folk that he loves. And can deal with. Is kind of the information he gives them is on a need to know basis only, but he still loves them and connects with them. But he has this huge cosmic view. And I thought, yeah, somehow we have to be Gandalf among the hobbits with this kind of stuff. Does that help, Christine, at all, or a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I just think I've heard sort of guidance like that before from Rinpoche and others, because I'm a solitary practitioner. I have no sangha except for what I now have on Zoom. Thank you very
Yeah.
much, everybody. And so this has been a lifelong problem for me, and maybe not just this life. And so I'm always looking for that interface, and I find, oh, look at this person. I think I love this person. I want to know this person. I want this person to know me. And then the realization that that's probably never going to happen, because I have this direction going that's working for me. It's the direction I want. I'm not going to change that, but it acts to set us apart from one another from time to time. But I think that advice that Rinpoche gave you about talking about food and travel is a very, very good idea, because those are two things that are sort of universal and not at all shallow. I
They're not.
mean,
Just
and
how
so
alone you
that
really
helps.
are.
Yeah,
Like this is an existentialist thing. You're way more alone than you think you are. But
yeah.
at the same time, like I like to look at it that way. Like you can say you're always alone and you're stuck in your own universe and blah, blah, blah. But Emmanuel Levinas, one of my favorite philosophers, very, very famous Jewish thinker, said you're always already with people that you're responsible for. The Starbucks barista making you a coffee, the plumber coming in, your stepkids, the lady whose dog poops on your yard and you have to go out and yell at her every day. Like the point is that you're always in a human context on an ethical level, right? So even if you're a yogi in retreat by yourself just eating sampa, there's people that drop you the groceries off. There is a shepherd that comes through once a week with his flock and says hi to you. And then there's all sorts of other sentient beings, spirit beings, animals, different gods. You're always in a situation with others. And I don't want to take too long. And I think, Josh, I'm not too sure. Maybe you had a question there. I know your little hand came up. So I'll get to you in one sec. But Namkhana Rinpoche talks about visiting this crazy yogi when he was younger, living on top of this mountain. The guy didn't eat. There was no food. There's no way to get up there. And he went up with his uncle and these lamas as they wanted to see who this guy was. And the guy was completely crazy. And he had all these feral dogs that attack them. And it was just like right out of a crazy movie. And the guy was nuts. He was just living in this pile of rocks. But as they were walking towards him, they heard him giving a Dharma discourse. And so they kind of got all chased away and they went down, what's that guy up to? And Nebuchadnezzar says, like, when you think about it, he's probably teaching spirits. Like he's working on this weird level, like on some alternate reality, teaching spirit beings. So the point is, he's as alone as it gets, but he still has people still being. And the story Lama Zopa would always teach all day and all night, and everyone would leave because it's like Tuesday night at 3:30 in the morning. He's still going, right? And then what he'd always say is, Venerable Roger could say one of his, they say, oh, Rinpoche, everyone's left. And he'd say, no, the room's still full because there's all these spirits or whatever beings getting. So he'd keep going because he's teaching them, right? So anyway, Josh, did you want to say anything? I just want to give you a chance because we're going to be finishing up soon. So
Oh, you're finishing up. I'll try to be really quick.
no worries.
Thanks.
Well, 10 minutes.
And
So.
I really enjoyed the little aside or allegory way of teaching around the Polish filmmaker and that little moment about precious human rebirth and the value at the core of that. Which is my question is like when I'm sharing this stuff or teaching or when I'm considering it, precious human rebirth. How do we reconcile that with, and it's a big one, with renunciation? How do they come together? And how would you discuss renunciation in light of samsara, nirvana as one, but we're renouncing samsara essentially? And so that, I mean, you could probably talk for like 20 hours on this, but really, I guess the first part is the one that I think is conversationally interesting, is like renunciation and precious human rebirth. How do they work? How would you talk about that?
That's again 20 hours or more. So
I know,
but
sorry.
anyway, we'll catch up. And we talk all the time anyway. We can talk about that on a phone call soon. But
Okay.
yeah, but to answer it quick, yeah, of course you're renouncing, because you're renouncing. Remember, what you're announcing is true sufferings. True sufferings come from all your delusions and karma and stuff. But technically, you're not renouncing the world or whatever. Like you're renouncing your deluded mind. The true origins that you know, obviously you're self-grasping, you're self-cherishing arrogance that leads to bad karma that creates suffering experiences, right? So true origins and true sufferings are what you are renouncing. And then, so you're renouncing what's in you, in your mind. That's what you're getting rid of. And then how do you do that? Well, we look at true cessations and true paths. And like I said, when you study Lam Rim and you get to the point of the intermediate scope, what you see samsara is what they call uncontrolled rebirth in 5 contaminated aggregates. So the fact that you keep taking rebirth over and over again in organic bodies that are born, grow a bit, have all these issues, old age, sickness, and death, and then you take it again. Whereas what we want is to replace this with an undying, immortal body of light and love and goodness, Buddha's body. So the thing is that that's a continuum. That Buddha body is in your organic body. That's what's amazing. So on a tantric level of renunciation, we're renouncing the organic part of ourselves for this inorganic part. But we only get at the inorganic part in and through the organic part. That's what's so difficult about it. So we are so lucky to be here in this organic body of flesh and blood to use this resource of subtle energies to bring about this higher evolution of ourselves. That's what, and so they say many beings that are spiritually evolved come down here to take rebirth as a human to use these resources to get ahead. That's what's kind of interesting, is you think, why the hell would you come here? And you have to, like, I remember my old teacher, he's like, you know what? Just think of 2 things that dominate your life: eating food and taking a crap. He's like, there's other systems of existence. You don't have to do that. Like the idea of you're always having to feed this body and then going to the bathroom. So, and that's gross, right? But nevertheless, what we have is, especially from a highest yoga tantra point of view, in our body itself, we have this whole system of energies that can produce these enormous spiritual realizations that take us out of this very conditioned world itself. And that's an amazing gift. That's an incredible gift. It's like there is a god or a goddess within us in this organic body that's getting old and falling apart. We just have to know how to use it. So Tantra is the instruction book for that. So renunciation, tantric renunciation, isn't I hate the world, I hate people, I hate going to work, I hate food, I hate sleep, I hate it's rather putting this process first, making this process of tantric transformation the focus of your life, not a hobby or a passion, but making this number one. So our Lama Bob Capitani, our friend, he always said, every year, new year, determine before you decide when I'm taking that holiday to Mexico, when whatever, I'm planning my golf weekends. Determine your tantric retreats, your tantric work first. That gets the priority in your life. Then work downward from that. So that's what real tantric renunciation. So Rinpoche says real renunciation is just wanting to do Dharma more and more and more and more, rather than, oh, I hate this, that sucks, gets just away from me. It's just like I just start making this my priority in my life. Does that help you? Yeah, okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Anything else before we finish up here, or what do you think? All good. Elena, anything? You always ask the best questions, but I don't want to put you on the spot because I know you'll probably ask a very difficult question that'll take me an answer.
It's probably not difficult, but
Yeah.
long. You mentioned at some point that you can tell later why we're so attached to worldly concerns. So I thought maybe if there is a time, if it's a good opportunity, you can tell about this.
Well, again, it's their self-cherishing, but I like this idea Lama Yeshe says. It's actually St. Thomas Aquinas says the same thing. We all want to be happy. We want bliss. And so what we have it is backwards, is we feel bliss is coming from us externally, which for the most part it is right now through worldly things, right? We want to run around, make a lot of money. Why? Because in my head, I can retire early in my Mexico place and I'm on the beach in the sun with my tequila, getting laid, going surfing. Like there's that pleasure. That's what we want. Or let's say if I'm a drug addict, I want to score some money to go this, or like whatever, I'm obsessed with this. I mean, whether it's sex or food, or I mean, it doesn't matter. No judgment there for anything. It can be like even food. I got friends where everything's about, I should make fun of them. They're close friends of mine. Everything's about dessert. Like everything, like when we're like even on the layover, it's like, oh my God, we got to get this place in Japan because it's like this famous kind of cheesecake. And it's like the whole world, all the stuff like that's a gravity, like a big magnet to go there. But why is that? Why do we want to go to the dessert place in Kyoto and get this piece of fancy cheesecake for 1,000 yen? Is because the bliss it creates in you, the happiness. We all want to be happy. Why do we all want to be? It's because we're not. In samsara, we're always off. Dukkha, we always, something's missing. Something's, as Jacques Lacan says from a Freudian point of view, when you go to the bottom of this, almost on a childhood point of view, it's not that just something's missing, something's been taken from you. Like almost as a child, there's been a primordial crime where you've been made this way, where something's always off, something's been done to me, something's been stolen from me, where I've been kicked out of Eden, but that's why we want bliss, is because we're so unhappy. But the funny thing is that bliss is always in us, always already. We just don't know how to turn it on. So we're looking for it outside of ourselves. So Tantra is about turning all this on. And if you get highest yoga Tantra realizations like Tumo, you have this bliss all the time. So Lama Zopa had, I can't remember this one Lama, he's very old, but he had very high completion stage realizations. So he's just in this orgasmic state all the time. And what was funny is he was in Dharamsala at the Dalai Lama's monastery, and he tripped and he fell down the stairs and he fractured his head. Like he had to go to the hospital. But like, oh my God, Rinpoche, are you okay? Is everything, how do you feel right now? And he's like, this amazing bliss, like even falling down, like he was always there. And so like he didn't need anything, like he was just always in that state. So that's kind of like the gold standard when you're in that state of bliss all the time. And then you can just have an open heart and shine that love out to everybody because nothing's missing. But that's why we do all worldly things, is we want, and that's why Freud said with the libido, what libido's after is bliss. And so he says when a little kid sees you eating ice cream, right? You're on the street in a summer day, you got ice cream, and little kids in the stroller is like, yeah, look, pointing. What does he want? Does he want the ice cream? No, he wants the happiness you are experiencing eating the ice cream. When you're smiling and eating, the little kid's, and he doesn't have it. Like even animals are like this. Like I used to eat really expensive cheese, and my parents' deerhounds would be around me like this, looking at me. And they're just like, what they want's that bliss too. It's not just us. We all want bliss. Tantra is about giving you the tools to find that bliss all the time within yourself, right? So, okay, how's that? Okay, so let's wind her down here, and we'll just do a quick dedication. The blessings of all holy beings, the truth of karma, the power of pure spirit intention bodhicitta. May all sentient beings reach awakening. Okay, so just turn off the recording here, and we'll see you next time for a new course.